webinar, our curtain raiser for the conference that we are planning to have April 14th through 16th. With me, I have Salim Ismail. A lot of you know him by name, but let me give you a brief introduction to Salim. I've known Salim for over 10 years. I met him when Singularity University first started in Silicon Valley, and he was sort of the hands and the feet and the heart and the head of Singularity. I remember he used to run around, arrange all the classes and all that stuff. So he's been there, and then he started exponential organization, and he's written a bestseller book, and it has been proven that people, organizations who follow the exponential organization framework have done well over the years. So I have with me Salim. I want to spend most of this time to have Salim talk about what he's doing, because INK has partnered with OpenEXO to host a very special conference, April 14th through 16th. So this curtain raiser is about telling you a little bit about it, so all of you get to know Salim and the vision behind what we are planning to do. So Salim, welcome to India. You're originally from here, but now you're in Toronto. So just so you know, Salim grew up in Mumbai and still loves kacha aam with salt and chili powder. When he's in India, that's the snack he wants, is raw mango with salt and chili powder. Very easy to please. And so he lives in Toronto now, running a very, very popular international organization about exponential organization. So Salim, tell us a little bit about your thought about exponential organization. How did you start, and what is the vision behind it?
So thanks, Lakshmi, and great to connect, and great to be back in a sense in today's world. With social distancing, everything is a virtual connection, right?
Correct.
We started building and noticing over the last decade, we've been building companies in a completely different way. And the simple reality is we have new companies that are scaling as fast as technology can scale. In the past, we learned how to scale technology, but building the organization was painfully linear and incremental. And so we documented this phenomenon and said, okay, how are the TEDs and the Ubers and the Airbnbs and the Facebooks, how are they scaling so fast? So we created a model, not that we invented the model, I think we just documented what was happening anyway, and put labels and characterizations on it. And it seems to have taken hold in a huge way. The craziest story is that last year a political consulting firm came to me and said, hey, we've been using your book to advise heads of state. And I said, wait, it wasn't really designed for that. I said, give me an example. And he says, Thailand, Ghana, South Africa. I said, wait, how many are you talking about? He says, 36. And so it seems to have reached now I just heard from John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods yesterday, that he's a huge fan, etc. So the damn book is, well, I think my publisher is very happy. My wife is less happy. But this is a good problem to have.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, in EXO, you talk about massive transformative purpose, and, we are going through a massive transformation right now. This is a pandemic that came out of nowhere, not just one country or one city, world over. We are dealing with it. So how do you find your transformative purpose in chaos? And can you give any examples from the past of somebody who was reinvented out of chaos?
I was literally on a webinar with Stephen Kotler last night about exactly this topic. In business history, there have been two situations where a company had a massive crisis and pulled out of it. One is IBM, and the other is Apple. Okay? And in both cases, they literally had a quarter or two of cash left, with billions of dollars of expenses. And you had Lou Gerstner and Steve Jobs. And in both cases, they were able to pivot the company. And I would argue that there have been lots of other cases where companies have hit a wall, but the leaders weren't the right leaders and couldn't pivot the company. Kodak, Blockbuster, others just smacked right against the wall, fell off the cliff, and that was it. So I think you have to have great leadership
Mm-hmm.
to navigate through times like this. The
Mm-hmm.
challenge in most of the world is we don't have great leadership,
Right, right, yeah.
especially on the political side. And you see what's happening in Brazil or
Mm-hmm.
in the US. It's a really, really difficult time right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a nightmare because you can't coordinate without that leadership. So what I
Mm-hmm.
think the positive is that people are going to start to learn how to do this without the leadership, and we
Mm-hmm.
go to a new model where we operate on a self-sufficient basis and just start navigating things. We start helping our neighbors on our own,
Yeah,
etc., and we just get it done.
yeah,
And I think, and really importantly, is the point you make. For the first time in living memory, and maybe ever, a common enemy is attacking the entire human population.
yeah, yeah.
And to our credit, at one level, we now have 100 million scientists, researchers focused on one problem. And we've
Mm-hmm.
never had this many people focused on one problem before. So it's
Yeah,
very exciting, very unnerving at one level, very exciting at another. It brought to sharp relief the linear to exponential paradigm that
yeah.
we've been talking about at Singularity. You can
Correct.
see the countries that and the leaders that didn't understand exponentials, and
Mm-hmm.
they're in a hell of a mess. And the ones that do understand exponentials, and
Mm-hmm.
they've navigated it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a really interesting time right now. Not a fun time, but an interesting time.
So, when you look at the current situation, Salim, we are watching it in different countries, and you work with some of the governments also.
Yeah.
Where do you think they've handled it extremely well, and where are you really worried about? What?
Where they handled it very well is some of the East Asian countries, Taiwan, Singapore, South Korea. Actually, Canada has done a really good job. Scandinavia has done a good job. For example, in Taiwan, they had 1,800 teams of 5 people each tracking every single person that landed at the airport, testing them, asking them where they'd been, were they anywhere near Wuhan, etc. And so they were able to corral it right at the border. And Taiwan has unbelievable connections to China, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's a very stark example of if you do it properly, you can manage it very well. Brazil is a nightmare with the
Mm-hmm.
president saying, I don't believe in this at all.
Yeah.
Boris Johnson walking around shaking hands in a
Shaking hands.
coronavirus
Yeah.
hospital,
Correct.
just
Yeah.
any leader that does
Yeah.
actions like that should be frankly taken out. And
Right.
God, let's hope he survives. But I mean,
Yeah.
the madness.
Yeah.
So there you see the sharp contrast in who's done it well. My Canadian passport right now is Golem's precious ring. I'm like stroking it, going, thank God for my
Yeah.
Canadian passport, given what's
Yeah.
happening in the US. The huge concern, I think, is if this gets into the Dharavi slums, or in Nairobi, or
Correct. Yeah.
it's not controllable in environments like this. So
Correct.
that's the huge danger.
Correct. So let me, we are planning this big conference, April 14th through 16th, which is,
Yeah.
it's a virtual conference, and but it's virtual conference where there are private rooms, you can have smaller groups. I mean, there's a whole sort of thing you have planned to make this as interactive as possible. I mean, in some ways, in B2C world, we've been talking about mass customization for a while, I think, and this is, in the conference world, maybe also there's a mass customization in terms of you can have thousands of people, but a smaller group of people be really close to each other. So tell me a little bit about what was the thought behind it. And just so, Salim, and we've been talking about this for about 3-4 weeks now. I mean, for us, I think it's very clear that for the foreseeable future, a lot of interaction has to happen online, because I think the social distancing is not a temporary phenomena. I think 1,000 people, 10,000 people coming together is going to be, I don't know, at least for another 6 months to a year, it's not going to happen. So we had to reinvent ourselves, and partnering with you to be able to bring world-class thinking to a group of people is very exciting for us, because everybody is at home. They want to sit at home and learn, because now we have a little bit more disposable time. So that's the reason we are excited. But why don't you share with everybody your vision for this gathering?
So, we were running 1-week courses for the global CEO and head of learning of Ernst & Young. and it was clear one of the programs a month or so ago got canceled. It was clear nothing was going to move for the next while. The smartest guy I know on the macroeconomic implications of this thinks that instead of 85 trillion of global GDP, we'll have 20 trillion this year. So this basically breaks the global economy if he's correct. What we've done over the last few hundred years is we've created massive economic interdependence globally, supply chains, globalization, etc. But we've not connected ourselves culturally, politically, emotionally, or spiritually. We're still operating in tribal systems, right? And you look at the issues in India, you see that very, very clearly. And what we need to do now is the work to connect ourselves, because this virus has no bounds. And this is, I think, a wake-up call for humanity, that you are one species, for God's sake. Start acting like it, right? My mother was a diplomat in the Middle East, and I asked her about how does the Middle East work, and she said it's really simple. It's me against my brother and I against our cousin, the three of us against the world. Yeah, that's the whole thing. And you see the whole world operating on this basis right now, driven mostly by stupidity and mostly by the politics of fear. And then because media tends to focus on negative news, we think the world is horrible, right? And so it was clear everything was going to get canceled. And I think when I heard that this 85 trillion may drop to 20 trillion, I thought, okay, the global super tanker may suddenly be grinding to a halt. And what an opportunity to turn it. Correct. Because our current political systems will try and take us back to where we were. And then we're right back in the mess of how are we dealing with climate change, how are we dealing with inequality, etc. Whereas what if we can transform, use that opportunity of stopping to transform and come back better? And we've been working on for 5 years what we think the underbelly of the problem is in terms of moving the world forward, which is when you try anything disruptive in a legacy environment, the immune system attacks you. Right. And anybody doing innovation in a big company knows what I'm talking about. They've got arrows on their backs because the antibodies come out and attack. And what struck me when I first learned this was I was at Yahoo as the head of innovation, which is theoretically a very young company. I can see a bank or an old telco, yes, but Yahoo is 10 years old. Why should it have this problem? And so I was struck with that. And then I went to do Singularity. And then you learn that we have 20 Gutenberg moments hitting us at the same time. We have a massive inability to absorb this, right? And so we've been working on programs, 10-week programs to solve this immune system problem. But then we did a nonprofit to solve this problem in the public sector. And we've done that for about 3 years, and we've solved it. We can now take a public sector environment and transform it and solve the immune system problem. And that's
Sorry, just to interrupt. In the public sector, was it a country? What was it that you guys?
Both. We usually work at city level. So we work with the mayor of Miami to transform public transportation, for example. But we work with the president of Colombia and the Supreme Court to transform the justice system in Colombia. Okay. So it takes 16 weeks because it's public sector, but we can achieve a complete turnaround, kind of like what Tony Robbins does with people, a state change. We can do with an organization or a legacy environment. And then underneath these for-profit and nonprofit process frameworks, I have a community of consultants that's about 4,000 people around the world. And we pulled them into different projects. And once we saw this public sector thing was working, we had a plan of gently rolling this out, open sourcing it, making it available. And then Corona hits, boom. And we're like, crap, what do we do now? We better take advantage of this. And so the idea was, what if we have a global conference about transforming the world? And so the way it's framed is the first day we have two possibilities as a human species right now. We either have a Mad Max future or we have a Star Trek future. Correct. Yeah. That's it. And it's pretty clear that the politicians and the current status is heading us down a Mad Max path. And I would like to tilt that future into a Mad Max future. The best comment I've heard about this event.
You mean a Star Trek future?
Of course, we want the Star Trek future. I want transporters. I want, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have enough hair to be in the Mad Max world. I think the best comment I've heard about this event that we're doing is a comment from Nishan Durgnarain, who was the Minister of Oceans in Mauritius. And he said, you really should be the Bretton Woods of the 21st century. After
Yeah.
World War II, Bretton Woods was the conference where they conceived of the UN, the World Health Organization, the IMF, the World Bank, the institutions that helped us navigate the world. Well, for now, we need a totally different set of institutions that operate in this very disruptive, distributed, decentralized world. And how will we deal with that? And so that's what we're trying to do. So we're bringing together some of the leading, the president of the UN, Maria Fernanda, that just finished, will open up the conference. We have 3 heads of state participating. We have multiple ministers of education from some major countries giving us their thoughts on some ideas. So we're going to talk about major global challenges, some of the technologies and tools by which we can address and transform the world, like design thinking, science fiction writing, scenario planning, etc. Talk through the rosy picture of what does the world look like if we could fix it. And then the third day is mostly an unconference where people can form smaller groups and go actually start this planning. Pick their MTP and start go. And then we think of the end of this event as the starting point of this transformation. Because now we can really activate people. My dream is we end up with 1,000 kind of super citizens in every major city around the world, just starting to execute against some of these ideas. And we've literally been, the explosion in interest in the last week has been insane. John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods, is dialing in. It's just going crazy right now. So I'm now holding on with my legs and
also, I mean, the conference is 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. PST, which is 7:30 p.m. to 4 a.m. India Standard Time, which doesn't quite work, but you have been very gracious to agree to do a session every day at 1 a.m. your time, which is 10:30 a.m. our time.
Every day? Did I agree every day?
Yes, you did. 2 days.
Let's see.
2 days.
So for example, we're going to have a panel with some of the top Chinese innovators late at night. So now it turns out to be, instead of sessions at specific times, it seems to be a nonstop 72-hour.
Correct.
Burning Man meets TED meets Singularity meets Hackathon.
Correct. So we are designing India-only sessions for which anybody who's dialed into the conference can also come, as well as people from India can come. We are designing those in the hours that India would be awake. And also you are wrapping up at least 2 days. You are giving a summary of what happened. And I'm talking to some other speakers also that I know and say, hey, do you mind coming in for half an hour here, half an hour there, kind of thing. We are creating a session for India so that we can have those conversations. Plus, thanks to your team, you're keeping it, the link alive for 2 weeks so that we can all hear it. The recording can be heard later for those who missed at night, etc. So we're going to.
We're definitely storing the sessions because the content coming out of this thing is unbelievable. Just the discussion between several heads of state on how they would think about the future is going to be really fascinating. But we have a panel from kids on how will they think about the future, because they're the ones that need to navigate this.
So a couple of questions I want to ask, of course, Padma Akala says, she was referring to when you said, the country said when they used it, she's like, you had no idea, this book would do that, did you?
No, you had no idea. When you write a book, in fact, when the book came out, it was the worst possible time to launch a book. Ebola was raging. Eric Schmidt was just launching his book. Peter Thiel was just launching his book. And for about 4 months, there was not a single peep about EXO, not a single word. So you think, oh, well, 3 years of your life, you gave it a shot. And then it starts going. And for most of 2015 and 2016, it was the highest rated business book on Amazon ever.
This is the long tail, right? This goes on and on and on. Really long tail.
That's really okay. So it's a very good problem to have, and I'm very humbled by the response.
Yeah, and then
people think I'm some sort of business guru, and I'm like, no. They look at the paragraph and they show me. They go, "What were you thinking when you wrote this paragraph?" And I'm like, I don't even remember writing that paragraph.
So Aditya Kanoria, who's our an amazing youngster, he's asking, how is it that all the brains in the world have not been able to keep Corona at bay?
Yeah, this is a great question. This is because it's not about brains. This is about, stupidity scales. Brains do not. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And when you see the stupidity of Boris Johnson, and I'm just going to call it out for what it is, shaking
Right.
hands of corona patients in defiance,
Right.
the madness of that, or what Bolsonaro is doing in Brazil or whatever, it's crazy. And this is just not a great time for stunt leadership.
Being a maverick, yeah.
Yeah, and we have stunt leadership in large parts of the world. It's a bad time. So it's a bad leadership problem.
Right.
I mean, just look into what's happening with the US supply chain around medical supplies. It's unbelievable. But I'll give you how bad it's getting. There was last week, there was a flight between Ireland and Romania, and it stopped in the middle to refuel. And the country in the middle confiscated the medical supplies for itself. And this is a flight within the EU. Okay.
Wow.
So this is like really, really crazy.
Yeah. Times. Right. And another question we have from Vijay Ramnathan saying, of course, Salim, good to join you. While carrying out disruptive actions and bringing more people on board with our plan, how are we to ensure that the narrative is not diluted and compromised over time?
Yeah, this is where you need to pick a massive transformative purpose, or an MTP as we call it, and stick to it. It's the big picture. It's Google saying, I want to organize the world's information, or Uber saying everybody's private driver, right? And you pick that huge transformative vision, the North Star, the Simon Sinek, which answers the question, why are you, what wakes you up at 6 a.m.? The way I like to frame it is, if you could spend $1 billion of other people's money on a problem, what would you spend it on? And even more, if it was your $1 billion, what would you spend it on? What problem would you go after solving? Because that's where we get real fulfillment, is the act of service and contribution. And when we can make a massive difference, where would it go? And that you can stay clear on, no matter what happens with Corona or not. How we deal with surviving this is the big challenge. And how do you have to pivot in order to just navigate and manage this? I mean, the entire consumer sector, travel, leisure, hotels, etc., is just completely seized up, and so there's a huge challenge.
Right. And Sanwar is asking about the future of capitalism. Now that the world is realizing who their saviors, essential workers are. I mean, one of the things that's talked about the whole time is, we pay our sports people and our stars so much, and so little to our nurses and our healthcare workers and researchers, especially in research, we spend so little. So do you think our priorities are wrong, and do you think something's going to change?
It's definitely wrong. We have a cult of celebrity globally, and we compensate people in that sense in a very disproportionate way. And it's all of our faults, right? I mean, you can't help but clicking through on some Kim Kardashian video, and you end up watching it. The good news is we have, I think this will break that structure, whether we want to or not. And we have now new models. So, for example, we'll be spending quite a bit of time at this event talking about conscious capitalism.
Right.
And Shubhro Sen is in Delhi, is putting together a panel with Raj Sisodia and John Mackey and a couple of people focused in that world. This is, I think, a really important time for Indian spirituality, which is pervaded subconsciously throughout the world. Conscious capitalism is part of that movement. Now it bubbles up a little bit more. So I'm very excited by that thought. But we need to rethink capitalism completely. And I think this will force us to do it. As I said before, we have economic interdependence. The best metaphor I've heard is from a guy called Lawrence Bloom, who was the first chairman of the World Economic Forum. And he said, look, you have to think about this as the capitalism for the last few hundred years was like the booster rocket lifting us out. And you need a big chunk of fuel burning horribly and very ugly and noisy to get you out of gravity. Once you get to low Earth orbit, you need a different spacecraft. So now it's time to jettison capitalism, fossil fuels, etc. And we need a totally different structure going forward. And we need to uncover and release that new structure is what we're hoping to do.
Yeah. And Balki Iyer is asking, what are your top 3 positives, jewels, and wants, learnings coming out of this? What would you like to see come out of this?
What would I like to see come out of that? I would like to see the global economy break. we'll be talking about the simple fact. 5 years ago, we had 50 trillion in global GDP, and we were 150 trillion in debt globally. Okay, roll forward 5 years. Last year, we had 85 trillion in GDP, and we were 300 trillion in debt. Okay, so we are actually exponentially growing debt to incrementally grow GDP. Try going to a bank and saying, please lend me $300 so I can make 150, and watch them walk you out the door, right? So this is unbelievably irresponsible, because we're passing that on to our kids and the next generation. And this is profoundly irresponsible, because we live in short-termism. We kick the can down the road. We've essentially, the economic recovery of the last 10 years has been from printing money. We've not had, and the author of this book, who'll be speaking, basically makes the point that either technology deflation or cryptocurrencies breaks that bubble. I talked to him about Corona, and he thinks that breaks that bubble. And you have to think about Corona as a singularity. It's a black hole, and you can't, all the models that you thought worked don't work on the other side of this. So we need to create completely new models. And as Paul Romer said, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste.
Right. And
so what we're trying to do with this event is, let's not waste this crisis. If things are breaking, let's not try and fix it. Let's come up with something new.
So Krishna Prasad is asking, what do you think would be running in the minds of the business owners? Employees versus customers. Where would they?
There's a film that, if you've not seen, please do go see. It's called Team America, made by the South Park guys. And the two characters are conversing. They say, how will we know if you're in trouble? And he says, here's what you'll know. I'll be doing this.
Yeah.
and so I think business owners today are like this. They're like totally freaked out. And understandably, because there's not a single possibility of revenue, and you don't know where it's coming from, and you don't know when.
Right.
And you've got fixed costs, etc. And this is an incredibly stressful time. I think it's really, really important to hunker down, retrench massively, save costs at all levels. It doesn't matter what that takes, and figure out how to survive this.
Is this a topic you'll be addressing in the conference?
No.
It's a very big thing for business owners.
It's a huge big thing. And in fact, we have the #1 expert on supply chain in the world coming and talking about, we're going to be breaking all this.
You want to tell a little bit about who that is?
That's Wolfgang Lechmacher.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. I know him. Yeah.
So Wolfgang is going to come on with a few people and say, here's what he's seeing on the supply chain side, because he's advising countries and big companies right now as to what happens to supply chain. And what do we do? I think countries like India have an enormous opportunity of leveraging the natural decentralization and the incredible small business environment, local services helping each other. There's a natural resilience to that.
Yeah, and
I think the U.S. suffers badly with big, stonking, centralized systems, etc.
Yeah, Suman's asking about, will the links of the session be available? Yes, they will be. For those in India who will be sleeping when the sessions will be going on.
Suman, by the way, is one of our EXO lieutenants in India. And he's one of these annoyingly smart people that always ask that question that you go, damn, I have to think about this for a while.
Yes, so it is going to be there, Suman, at least for 2 weeks after the conference for people to see. So any parting words, Salim? One is, obviously we want, we've been very fortunate to work with Salim and offer a special prize for India and make it even possible for students to join. So all those are available if you write to exoreg@INKtalks.com. We can send you all the special prizes and all that stuff. Salim, I'd love your parting words on why do you want people to come join this, and what should they contribute? What should they come? What mindset should they come with?
So we kept the ticket prices, the singularity type equivalents of this are like $15,000, right? And we made the tickets incredibly inexpensive because we want accessibility of a very large group of people. All the proceeds of this event go towards the programs that come out of the program. So whatever the participants design will be funding many of the initiatives coming out of it. My entire 4,000 person EXO community is involved. They'll be helping with the side sessions, et cetera, et cetera. I want this to be a transformative moment in human history where we gather together as a global leadership and more importantly, find the next generation of leaders that can take up the reins and go do this work of transformation.
Yes.
And we have now tools. When we think of society, we think about it as people, individuals, organizations, institutions, and geographies. Okay? And we have tool sets for transforming each of those. And I'll end with a really small example. There's a company out of Miami that will be showcasing that has created an 8-inch pad, like about this diameter, that a woman would put on left and right sides of her chest to detect breast cancer. Okay? Right. Okay. It turns out this is 80% better at detecting breast cancer than a mammogram. You can do it at home. It costs $20, and it's FDA approved.
Yeah.
So essentially, we can now eradicate breast cancer by giving this out to people.
Right.
And so if we can see these type of breakthrough solutions, how do we get them into society much, much more quickly? And we're helping to connect the dots between breakthrough new ideas and fast implementation so that we can create a more nimble world that really leverages the technologies that are coming. And the 20 Gutenberg moments, solar energy, microgrids, next generation battery technology, blockchain, for God's sakes, will allow us to eradicate corruption.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Right. You know, if you just put the Peruvian economist has said that if you just put land titles on the blockchain and do nothing else, we'll save inject about 20 trillion into the global economy.
Yeah.
But try getting a government to say that we're not authoritative of who owns what land, right? Because if we do that, we can't have corruption. That would be terrible.
Actually, we do have we were doing a conference. We do have a task force here who's led by, someone we know very well, exactly for that. Because in India, if you don't have the systems, why not you go straight to blockchain?
Exactly right. And we have a huge opportunity. Yeah. And I think this is where we'll start seeing massive changes. And it's going to unleash unbelievable human potential. And from an economic perspective, I think we'll get more quickly to what we call a UBI, or universal basic income.
Yes,
Because we can actually feed the world cleanly. If we can deliver, if human society can deliver to everybody the bottom 2 layers of Maslow's hierarchy, then people can go to self-fulfillment, etc., much more aggressively and faster. And you can achieve the ideals of conscious capitalism and the spiritual practices and work. And humanity actually achieves that spiritual state that we want to have it achieve. And
for us at INK, the reason we are excited about this is that I think we really believe that Maslow's theory of hierarchy need not be, sequential. A company should be having their wants, needs, and self-actualization all at the same time. So that's what brings conscious capitalism from the day you're born. It's not like you become a good company and then suddenly start doing good stuff while you walk all over the others.
And depends a lot on what you did in your past lives, right? there's that also.
So I just want to say, for us, our mission has been accelerating the journeys of game changers and to bring the best of the rest of the world to India and take the best of India to the rest of the world. So, in some ways, Salim, you're best of India who went to rest of the world. In some other ways, you're the best of rest of the world we are bringing to India. So it's been wonderful. And, I think all the details are on the YouTube stream. Please write to exoreg@inktalks.com. You'll get all the details. We want whatever it works for you to come join. Let us know. We want to make it possible for everyone to come join this, and see you soon.
Wait, I want to say something.
Sure.
I think this is a time for India to step out and really lead the world.
Yes.
It's the natural entrepreneurship is there, the natural quest for better is there, and the skills are there, the intellect is there. We just have to put the bottom structures into place, and boom, off it goes. And I think this is really possible to do.
I agree. And I think, for us, India can really take a huge place in, social empowerment in terms of we always say, how do we move into modern times while we take our traditions along? And I think there's a great opportunity for India to reinvent itself and be a leader. So this will be the beginning. This conference will be the beginning for many things we hope to do, and look forward to everybody joining. And Salim, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Lakshmi, and great to partner with you.
Thanks. See ya. Bye.
Okay. Bye.